I'm not going to rehash the entire deal of what we've talked about up until this point, but God's people were a kingdom. They were split into north and south, and the northern kingdom was taken away by a country called Assyria. They overtook them in 722 BC and then took them many of them off into exile. And then Jeremiah shows up and says, man, it's going to get bad you remember how many years they were going to be? 70 years. Carried off, and then after the end of those 70 years, you'll be brought back, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. So all that was going on, and sure enough, in 597 BC, the southern kingdom was overtaken by a country called Babylon that was the world power at the time, and they took off Daniel and others, thousands of exiles. And then, after that period was over, about 525, 530 BC perhaps, people began to go back. And they weren't going back to this incredible city that they remembered before. They were going back to a torn down, broken down pile of ruins. People were there. Some had stayed there. Not everyone was exiled away, but there was nothing really left for them. People were barely getting by. They were no threat to anyone at all. They didn't have a temple, a place to worship, which would have been their primary source of confidence and understanding that God's favor is on them, a place where they could meet with God in his presence or close to it. They didn't have any city walls. That was a big deal. They were not protected. Any other country at any point could have come in and said, no, we'll take that. They could not have stopped it. So they were struggling in a mighty, mighty way. And Nehemiah is a man that was not taken away into exile. We don't think so. He was there in Babylon and grew up there. Then when Persia took over, he was cupbearer to the king, the Persian king. And he lived in a place called Susa. And he is the cupbearer, meaning that he takes the wine to the king and maybe even sips a little bit to make sure there's no poison and the king can take it. So it's a very important job in that it's close to the king. He trusts him with his life. But it's not really a place of power, but it's a place of great importance. And Nehemiah, although a Jewish man, has never really lived there and doesn't know anything about that place other than just memories or maybe a little bit of an imagination, but those are his people. And yet he lives in Persia, and he's the king's cupbearer. While he's there one day, some people from Judah, from the southern kingdom, come back. They're visiting in the Persian capital there, and he bumps into them. And he says, oh, shalom. In other words, like, hey, we're brothers. You're from where I kind of want to be, but where I'm from, you're my people. And he said, how are things with the rebuild? Like, how's the city going? I know people have been going back for years and years, and this is almost 100 years later after people have started to go back. He said, how's it going? And they replied in Nehemiah chapter 1, verse 1, they said to me, those who survived the exile and are back in the province are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates have been burned with fire. When I heard these things, I sat down and wept. For some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. So he gets the news, and it's not good. And even though he's got a comfortable life, even though he's there next to the king, there's nothing that he wants that he doesn't have. There's nothing he needs, of course, that he doesn't have. And he's there, and he gets the news, though, that everything has fallen apart in this place that he still calls home, even though it's never really been his home. And it breaks him, brings him to his knees, to the point where he can't necessarily enjoy anymore what he's doing. He can't be at peace here, knowing what's going on over there. So he is immediately burdened for it. We're told as we read on that he spent some time and he prayed and he fasted. He stepped away and said, I don't want to eat for a while. I just want to pray. I'm going to spend time with God. And he allowed God to bring some clarity to the situation. And then at the end of that time of prayer, he realized this is not just a feeling. This is a burden. This is a spiritual thing, and I've got to do something about this. I want to go and do something about it, but I can't go. The king's not going to let me go and just go to a place that I haven't been and be a part of another rebuild for a kingdom. And I don't know what I'm going to do here. So he began to pray, and he asked God in verse 11, Lord, let your ear be attentive to the prayer of this, your servant, and to the prayer of your servants who delight in revering your name. Give your servant success today by granting him favor in the presence of this man, talking about the king. He said, I want to do something about this. I've got the burden. I prayed about it. I know it's me. I'm supposed to do something about this. I need some favor. And God, I know that my king doesn't honor you. He doesn't even recognize you as the one true God. But I also know that you're the king of the universe and you can direct his heart. So I'm going to ask that you give me favor in the presence of the king so that I can do something about this burden that is on me. So he spends some time praying about it. After the prayer, he's called to go bring wine to the king. He walks into the king's presence. And I don't know if he's, really selling it or not, but he walks in and he's got this look. And the king says, why are you so sad, man? What is going on with you? You're not sick, are you? Like, what is happening? And his reply was, how can I not be sad when my home is in ruins? And for whatever reason, the king didn't stop to go, your home, this is where you live. What are you talking about? He understood that he was referring to the people of Judah and what was happening there. And in verse 4, surprisingly, in chapter 2, the king gives him an answer he might not have expected at the time. This is a king that doesn't even know his God. Maybe he has some awareness of what's going on and what Nehemiah wants and where he's from. But he's just moping around. And then the king says, all right, what do you want? Tell me, give me your request. I'm ready to respond. And Nehemiah realized in that second, oh no, God actually answered my prayer. I've got this favor. And those moments happen to all of us. Sometimes we just ask, God, would you please this? We don't really expect him to. We just say, God, would you help this? Would you give me favor over here? And then when God does, it takes us off track for a moment. And he says, what do you want? Then I prayed to the God of heaven. Not like on my knees, but it looks like he had one of those, oh God, help me, help me, help me. Then it comes out. And I answered the king, if it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in his sight, let him send me to the city in Judah where my ancestors are buried so that I can rebuild it. I don't know if the king was thinking Nehemiah would say, would you send a team? Would you send some money? Would you send some supplies? Would you send some contractors? Would you send some stuff? But he says, would you send me? Let me go back. I'm not necessarily qualified, but I want to do this. This burden is on me. And I've dealt with it, I've struggled with it, and now I'm ready to take action. And as we step back from the story for just a moment, there are three things that he went through. There was burden, and then there was prayer, and then there was action. He was a world changer, he was a life changer, and those are going to be things that are common to every single person that God calls up to change someone's life or change a scenario, change a situation. There's a burden, then there's prayer, and then there's action. The burden, he didn't ask for it, it was just hit him. And there are times we experience this, things that we see or read or hear about from someone else, and it might not hit them a certain way, but it crushes us. We're thinking, it shouldn't be. That should not be experienced. It should not be that way. They should not have to go through this. But then you have to step back and begin to pray because we can all be manipulated by our emotions. We all can be fooled. My family and I went to a concert this weekend, and while we were there, someone came out on behalf of an organization that raises funds and sponsors and donors for people who don't have money, and specifically kids, who don't have the money, the resources, the food, the shelter, all that stuff. And so they're pretty heavy with it. You know how this works. You've been in those scenarios before. And they show you the picture of the cutest, skinniest, most malnourished, bright-eyed kid in the entire country. And they go, don't you care? Don't you? And they would go, of course I care. Then you start to look and go, oh man, what? If I don't, who will? And next thing you know, you walk out and you're sponsoring 48 kids in 45 countries, and it's like $40 a pop, and you're going, how am I? But the emotions kind of get you, And so it hit us, and I felt the weird way. I'm there, I knew people were around, and my kids and my wife are there, and they're asking, and my kids are looking at me like, are we doing this? And I'm like, we're going to pray. We're going to spend some time. We're not going to respond right here. And they're like, if you don't respond now, stop it. Just quit it. Let me have a moment. And I stepped back and was reminded that we've been sponsoring kids for 20 years. Some of them have aged out and they got their own families, and we're like, it's a great thing. But in the moment, you're just kind of there. And it happens. There'll be a moment. You'll meet someone who's just in a difficult situation. Think, I got to help them. But then after you have your meal, or after you drive away, or after you go to bed, you wake up and forget all about it. But then there are those things you can't shake. those burdens. And then you step back and begin to pray. God, is this an issue that I'm just supposed to be aware of, or am I supposed to actually do something about this? And you spend time in God, with God in prayer, asking him about that. This summer, I had the privilege of meeting a couple of people who are missionaries to another country. And I heard their story. I said, how did you guys meet Jesus? And they kind of laughed a little bit and said, well, who's going to tell you? And the girl ended up saying, well, I'm from another country, and I knew that. She was from a different ethnicity. She said, I'm from another country. I'd heard about Jesus, but didn't really understand what he did. And then a missionary team came and shared it with me, and I became a follower of Jesus, and now I want to spend my life telling other people. I was like, oh, cool. Are you still in contact with the people that, led you to Jesus? It's like, well, I married him. And I'm like, I see how this works. So you got this couple, and they met, and he led her to Jesus, and they became missionaries together. And she said, well, my mother, though, who is still in China, she's not a follower of Jesus. And in that moment, I just was burdened for her. And praying for people who don't know Jesus tends to be the thing that I do more than anything else on my own. And so I said, I'm going to commit to praying for your mom until I find out she's met Jesus. And so every day since mid-July, I've spent time in the morning, and she is one of the people that I pray for by name. And I still feel in a weird way I have to tell God who she is, like he doesn't know her. Like my friend Courtney's mom, she's the one in China. Like I have to explain, like as if, no, wrong Courtney, like the other. I don't know. I have to clarify just in case the Lord's dealing with a lot of different Courtney's moms in China. I don't know. I just want to clarify. But I know, though, that I'm not supposed to pack up my family and just move to China until this lady says yes to Jesus. I'm going to do battle for her. I'm going to fight for her in prayer because I know prayer is powerful and prayer is a warfare. But then there are other times when there are things that I know God has called me to do something about. It's not just a burden. I've prayed about it. I know it's not just a feeling or a fleeting moment. It's bigger than that. And I step in to take action. And there are tons of examples, but I went over in the first service, so I want to move on. But for you, that's going to be a common thing. And that's the fun stuff, really. You get the burden, you pray about it, you realize, oh, I'm made for something more, like God's doing something in me. But the honeymoon begins to end usually when the action starts. And that's what happened for Nehemiah. And in chapter 2, in verse 19, there are some officials around, not Jewish people, but some officials in the area. They were governing people. They heard about this guy that had come back and that was beginning to recruit people to build this wall. And in verse 19, it says, when Sanballat the Horonite, Tobiah the Ammonite, official, and Geshem the Arab heard about it, they mocked and ridiculed us. What is this you are doing, they asked. Are you rebelling against the king? And I answered them by saying, the God of heaven will give us success. We, his servants, will start rebuilding. But as for you, you have no share in Jerusalem or any claim or historic right to it. He says, guys, this is not your business. This is about my people. God has called me to do something for the people of God, to build these walls around Jerusalem so that we can have confidence, so that we can have prominence again, so that the people will realize that God is doing something special. He set us apart for something that he has not set anyone else apart for. It was different. They didn't quite understand Christmas was on its way and all that yet, but they said, we know God has chosen us and God is calling me to rebuild the walls to this place. And this has nothing to do with you. So they began their plan to shut it all down. And the first thing that they introduced into his life was something that all of you who choose to make a difference, whether it as an administrator, a teacher, a coach, a husband, a wife, a grandparent, a missionary, a pastor, whatever it is, this is probably going to be something you can expect. And the first thing is discouragement. The first thing he experienced in a not so positive kind of way was discouragement, because for every attaboy, we're so proud of you, there is a get out of my way that is coming your way if you want to make a difference. And he experienced that. And it moved to chapter 4. Discouragement's been heaped on him for a while. And in verse 1, it says, when Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the wall, in other words, it's actually going through. We're not stopping because of the discouragement. He became angry and was greatly incensed. He ridiculed the Jews. And in the presence of his associates, and the army of Samaria, he said, "What are these feeble Jews doing? Will they restore their wall? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they finish in a day? Can they bring the stones back to life from those heaps of rubble, burned as they are?" Tobiah the Ammonite, who was at his side, said, "What are they building? Even a fox climbing up on it would break down their wall of stones." In other words, this is pathetic. They don't know what they're doing. They can't build very well. They're not builders. They're not experienced. Whatever they build is just going to crumble. Anyway, just continuing the discouragement. And this attack is not based on fact. It's really based on fear. They were worried about what was going to happen if God's people began to get their stuff together and perhaps became a true prominent nation again. It would threaten them. So they began to be discouraging. And the second thing we find here, and as far as the negative is concerned, is if the enemy can make you doubt yourself, you're likely to quit. So you got discouragement, and then doubt is that next level where you begin to wonder, do I have what it takes? Like, am I the wrong person? Should I just send money? Should I just send encouragement? Should I just pray about it? Should I just say, "Hey, you're doing great"? Or do I step in? Because I really don't have what it takes. And you've got a man whose skill was taking wine from a servant and handing it to the king. "I'm going to go build a wall, and I'm going to make sure it's done." I would love to build a house for my wife. That would not be a safe place to live. I do not have those skills. I have a lot of friends who do, but I do not have those skills. And as he went back and recruited, certainly he didn't recruit a bunch of cupbearers, but he is recruiting people who may or may not have built things before, but the destruction or the possibility of destroying what they built up is real. And so they're going through this discouragement. They're going through this time of doubt. But Nehemiah gave no time to it. He gave 0 minutes to even considering, is it important what they think about me? It didn't bother him at all. He went on, and in verse 9 of chapter 4, they found out that there was a plot to actually attack them. Things were about to get physical. And I love how he responded. He reassesses the method, but he doesn't abandon the mission here. He says, "We prayed to our God and posted a guard day and night to meet this threat." And then skipping down, I think it's verse 16 here. "From that day on, half of my men did the work, while the other half were equipped with spears, shields, bows, and armor. Those who carried materials did their work with one hand and held a weapon in the other." In verse 18, "And each of the builders wore his sword at his side as he worked." This visual it's a little comical. It's okay to laugh sometimes when you're reading through scripture, but you've got like build and stab, build and stab. You've got your tool over here and you got your weapon over here. He said, just be prepared. I don't know that they were stabbing people left and right, but you were prepared. You don't carry a weapon just to threaten someone. Like, it's a real deal. He said, be prepared. You might have to work and then just put your tool down and turn around and fight, but then you get back to it because we got to build this wall. We have to stay on task. And when Nehemiah's enemies realized that this wall was about to be finished and they were fully prepared to defend themselves, to continue to work, all they could really do now was try to distract him, to try to pull him off mission. And so they changed their tactics. And we know that they sent him a letter and said, hey man, let's just kind of meet. Let's meet up. Let's just talk about this. I think we got off on the wrong foot. That whole thing when I threatened to kill you, like, my bad. Like, let's just begin again. Let's sit down and have a talk. So they invited him to meet. And we find that, truthfully, this might be the most difficult distraction or a difficult element for all of us, and that is the element of distraction. Most of you are not going to quit on something that God has called you to do because you just doubt your ability. We all go through those insecurities. Most of the time, it's because you've been distracted. Other things have taken prominence. Other things have just stepped in importance, or you just have a new relationship or a new job or a new issue or a new struggle. Something else is going on. You're distracted. And in chapter 6, verse 3, moving ahead a couple of pages there, Nehemiah saw through the invitation to meet, and he says, but they were scheming to harm me. So I sent messengers to them with this reply: I am carrying on a great project or a great work and cannot go down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and go down to you? 4 times they sent me the same message, and each time I gave them the same answer. He realized what it was, that this whole thing, to discourage him, to cause him to doubt himself, to distract him from what's really important. He saw through all of it and said, I'm not doing it. What I'm doing is great and is important, and I'm going to stay at it. I'm not going to step away from it. I'm not going to walk away. And if we pull back a moment and just begin to take a look at our own lives, there are those moments when we can look back and remember times when God burdened us. Maybe you were in a spot like this. You're sitting here, someone like me or different is teaching and opening up God's word, or maybe God just spoke to you while you're in the middle of singing. And you were like, man, I am so broken for this family or for this situation, for these people, or for this neighborhood, or for this condition, this issue, whatever's going on. God, use me, use me. And then you left and you had a plan, you were ready, you prayed about it, said, let's do this. And this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to work it out. And then things began to get difficult and you got discouraged. And maybe you realized, I need to go tell someone what's going on. You said, hey, this is what I feel like I'm supposed to do. And they just looked at you like, oh, okay. Do you think you can do that? Like, do you know how to do that? Are you prepared to do that? Do you know how hard that is? And immediately all that fire you had is just goes down. And then over time, you begin to doubt yourself and you just got distracted with other things. And those promises that you made God just lie on the floor of some church somewhere, or in the living room somewhere, or in the floor bed of your truck, where you're like, God, I'm doing this. And it just fell off to the side. Most of the time because of distraction, because of doubt, because of all the discouragement that we face. You say, well, I don't know about being a world changer. I'm just trying to survive right now. Like right now, my relationship or my kids or my marriage or my job or my health or everything is falling apart. Listen, if there is a place where there needs to be a wall, it is around your home and around your family, around the people that you care about. I think when we look at this, we're going, so where am I supposed to go to? Who needs a wall anyway? Like, why is this forget the wall. This is a man who looked out and said, here is a need that is beyond anything that I can just shake. It is a burden. God's obviously putting this on me and I'm ready to move. And he completed it. For you, it might not be some huge thing that you feel like is going to change the world, but you know it's going to change one life. And it's really why I answered the call to build this place. I know I didn't do it by myself, but to build this church family. Because I just knew too many lives that were in ruins. They were exposed, they were vulnerable, they were struck down with shame and disgrace. And I just wanted to be with some people who would build a wall for people so that they could just find the breath that they needed to get back on their feet and to begin to live the lives that God had for them. But sometimes we're just so overwhelmed we can't even stand up. And Nehemiah goes back, not to bad people, but to people going, man, there's just no hope. I don't have a home. I don't have a house. I don't have a life. I don't have a job. I don't know if I can afford this. I don't know if I can pay for this. Nehemiah said, let's begin here and let's begin to build this around you. And for you, maybe this call on your life is to go home and say, my family is at risk and we are being attacked. And I am going to build a wall. You say, well, that's only going to affect 1 or 2 or 3 people. It's going to change the world. I've come to grips with that in my own life. I know because I get to stand here with a microphone and a spotlight and be online that it looks like I'm affecting more people than others. That's just not true. That is absolutely not true at all. You will be the ones to affect other people. All you have to do is turn off a sermon, put off, click, stop. That's it. Your lives go on as you live and you work with and you make a difference in people's lives. I came to grips with that years and years ago. I had a pastor this week that texted me and said, hey, by the way, I met your son this week, cool guy. And, I said, thank you. But then I thought, no, I just deleted thank you. And I told him what I really thought. And I said, actually, he has become the man that I had wanted to become. But that's okay. Because I know I had a part in setting the foundation. And I've come to grips with that, and I am pleased with that. And I'm happy to be that one that just set it up. And for you, it might not be you, it might be someone else. It might be you getting ready for another generation, preparing things, but your wall is no less important. And if you've laid down your tools because you've been discouraged along the way, I want to remind you today of the burden that you had way back whenever that was, last week or 15 years ago. when you realize like that's a problem that doesn't seem to bother anybody else as much as it bothers me. Why is that? It's because God has called you up to make a difference. It could be inside your house, building a wall around your family. It could be in your community, building a wall around people who are vulnerable and don't have what you have. It could be building a platform for someone else to be able to preach the name of Jesus to other people. I think you need to be reminded more than anything, though, of why you do what you do. And that phrase that we read is the phrase I want to leave you with. He said, his reply to those who wanted to distract him was, I am carrying on a great work, and I can't come down right now. I just don't have time for you. But we hate you. Well, stinks to be me then, because I got a work to do. But we're going to attack you if you don't come down. Well, bring it on. I've got another tool. I'm doing a job here. But you're not qualified to do that. You think you're the first to tell me that? That's okay. God has called me to this. I'm doing a great work. And mamas, you may feel like you put aside your mission to mother your kids. There is no wall more important than the wall that you're building around your children right now. Don't for a moment think that you're not on mission. You are. You men and women who came back from service and you retired at the ripe old age of 40 or whatever you are, you came back and you said, okay, I'm no longer active duty. You did a great work for your country. We're so thankful for you. But I'm telling you, your work is not done at all. And God is ready just to give you your next assignment. It could be building a wall around your home, your family. It could be something completely different. But it is not over. But we have to be willing to spend that time with God and say, I got this burden. What do I do with it? And God will begin to direct you. Because whatever the thing is that he's called you to is a great, great work. And you can't afford to come down. And the people who need you to build that wall for them cannot afford for you to come down. And the future church, the future of the church cannot afford for you to come down. So really what I'm asking today is that for those of you who have laid down your weapons, laid down your tools, pick them back up again, to be reminded of the work that God has called you to be the life changer and the world changer you've been made to be. Let's pray together.